afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California, this is Spiritual Fitness with your host, Vaishishka Prabhu, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk, and myself, JM. Spiritual Fitness is a program dedicated to exploring the timeless texts and practices of Bhakti Yoga for people who want wisdom in their everyday life. We have more than 25 members on Zoom, and I do have Anushri helping me out today with social media. Good afternoon, Vaishka Prabhu. Welcome.
Thank you very much, JM. Glad to be back and glad to be revisiting the timeless texts on yoga. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Yoga Sutras because it's a very detailed literature, although it's written in code and Sanskrit. Unpacking it takes a long time. Welcome, everybody, and it's a heartfelt day for me joining back with you to have this discussion, and I welcome you if you like. It's up to you how you feel comfortable. You feel free to turn on your camera, even if you're in your pajamas or whatever. It's fine. It's just we're like with family here. It's not some big special presentation. Well, hopefully it's special, but it's not formal. so, so feel free to participate also because what's coming from you is very powerful. And I'm one voice. I can be a monologue here and I can present some things, but when it reflects back from you in the form of questions or ideas that you pick up when you hear this, it becomes far more profound. It deepens it. So feel free. This is the kind of forum that this is. It's meant for participation, and it's a lot of fun when we hear more voices too. So first, I offer my respects to my spiritual teacher, who I've been with since 1973. Passed away in 1977, but I had some of the best years of my young life with him. And I offer my sincere respects to all of you. Thank you for joining. So we're revisiting a few concepts, and we do this again and again because revisiting some of the principles and concepts from the ancient yoga wisdom texts implants them in our mind and gives us some criteria to work from when we're working on ourselves, either through bhakti yoga or karma yoga or doing a meditation. They're universally applicable, the principles that I will be speaking about today. And one of the principles which I've mentioned frequently over the last few weeks is the very premise of the book, the Yoga Sutras. A sutra is a pithy statement, a code that's meant to be unpacked, and it is, by great commentators over the year, accomplished yogis and great philosophers and thinkers. And the first aphorism or code that appears in the Yoga Sutras is that the yoga means the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind. And there's a premise in all of this, and that is that all of our sufferings come from identifying with these fluctuations in the mind. So just those two pieces of information could be extremely helpful because just as the musk deer spends its life, the mythical the story about the musk deer looking everywhere for where the smell of musk is coming from, on the high mountains and down in the valleys, through the brush and in the rivers. Where's that smell? But it's actually coming from its own navel. And so I may be looking outside myself, searching for ways to adjust my life. As I remember in the old days when I was a kid, there was a thing that would come on television sometimes that don't adjust your television set because what's happening right now on the TV is real. So actually, no need to adjust the external world, but Patanjali, the author of the Yoga Sutras, said everything can be adjusted from the inside. And one of the first disciplines is really to look inside and observe what's going on in there, what's actually happening. And you can see if it's parallel to what you're hearing from the Yoga Sutras.
Hello.
Hi. We have somebody in agreement with the Yoga Sutra statement. Thank you. So today we're going to start with a little bit of introspection. I like to call it that because oftentimes when I say meditation, that there are various ideas about what meditation is, but introspection just means to look within. And it's very practical because we're the lookers. We are the seers, and we have the choice of where to look. And we can look around the world, we can look inside, and where our attention goes, our energy flows. So let's practice just for a minute, turning our attention inwardly. And if you'll just sit up a tad taller than you were a second ago, and bring your awareness to your breath. And breathe. And appreciate your breath. And appreciate that your breath and the oxygen you're taking in is a gift. When you exhale, you can think in your mind out, so you can keep your mind focused on the breath. And when you take a nice natural inhale, you can think in. Throughout the day, I'm working, thinking, moving, and I forget about my breath that's maintaining me. I can't do without it even for a few minutes, even for a few seconds. So now take time to appreciate the gift. And breathe. And let any thoughts that are swirling in your mind go, just like clouds in the sky floating off. And just be. We're human beings, not human doings. And breathe and relax. Keep your mind alert. And now bring your attention to your heart region. The center of emotion, the center of life. We're driven by our heart center where we reside. And breathe. And now to balance our energies, we'll say the mantra Om together behind closed mics. And just feel the vibration as you say the mantra. And you can follow with me after your next inhalation. Om is the mantra that synchronizes all the energy in our chakras. And now we'll repeat the mantra Nitai Gauranga, which opens our heart to compassion. I'll say 3 times, and you can follow behind muted mics. Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga. Now please see if you can observe thought energy. Thoughts are things. Thoughts are substance, although very subtle. And everything in this world expands from the subtle to the gross and manifests. So as you're introspecting, notice thought energy. Observe it. And notice that it's an energy and that you are the observer of that energy. Separating oneself from one's thought energy and objectifying it is one of the first tangible steps in introspection. You are not your thoughts, just as much as you're not the clouds in the sky. You are not the air or the wind around you, nor are you the thought energy that is flowing through your chitta or your mind. Take one last look and notice that thought energy is moving throughout your chitta. And now let's leave those thoughts behind and come back to our breath and appreciate the moment that we're in right now, because we're never anywhere else. We exist now, and we've always existed now, and we always will exist now. And breathe, and bring your attention to your breath. And you can rub your hands together to bring some awareness of your external body. Open your eyes and come back to the external environment. And welcome back. Yoga, or this practice of observing and developing discrimination, which is called Vivek, popular name, actually. Vivek means discrimination. The ability to discriminate between yourself as a seer and your thought energy. What to speak of the vehicle that you're now inhabiting, which is this body, which is really a biomechanical robot. So this practice of introspection aided by mantra, you will develop higher states of perception and contentment. Perception and contentment. One of the points made throughout the yoga wisdom literature is that reality is beautiful. When I see reality, when I see who I am, and I notice that I'm being maintained, then I feel content. It's only when I look outside myself and I identify myself with the thought energy, with this external body, and with my life situation, the situation in the world which I can't control, that I feel discontent. How could I feel content? It's not me. But what we are, what reality is unlimitedly attractive. And having even a glimpse of that brings one to the practice of, or the pursuit of one's inner life. This is a quotation somebody sent me yesterday that I thought would fit in this context, by a painter, Agnes Martin, who said, on the one thing you have to know in life, there's so many people who don't know what they want. And I think that in this world, that's the only thing you have to know, exactly what you want. And in the yoga tradition, it is said, Tato Brahma Jignasa, first know who you are before you decide what you want. Because we can't feel satisfied with those things that don't actually attend to our actual existence, our self. So bhakti yoga, the practice of yoga, is an identity change. It changes us from identifying with the body and our life situation to identifying with our life and the source of our life. And as we talked about before, there are two coverings to ourself, a gross and a subtle covering. The mind, which is a substance called the chitta, is compared sometimes to a lake. We're standing by that perfectly still lake, as I've been to the Poets Walk in North Carolina. It's a beautiful private park, but the owners let anybody who's respectful walk in that place. There's a perfect reflecting pool. It's a fairly a large pond, actually. It's about the size of 5 or 6 Olympic swimming pools. And by the side of that pond, there is a willow tree. And I stood there mesmerized, and I do each time I walk there, because on a day without wind, I cannot tell the difference between the tree and the reflection of the tree and the reflection of everything else that's in the pond. So Patanjali says, observing my mind, I see the reflection of everything the mind's taken in. And when I'm identifying with the mind, I'm actually identifying with echoes or reflections of things that have already happened to me that are stored within the mind. I'm under the influence of past impressions when I identify with the mind. So there's DUI, which is a crime, driving under the influence. And then there's TUI, thinking under the influence of previous impressions. For instance, I may have impressions from this life of things that have happened to me. They're imprinted in my mind, and when I look at my mind and it repeats, it echoes that this is what happened, then it causes me to make decisions. I'm making decisions based on my subconscious mind. So there's TUI and there's LUI, which is living under the influence of previous impressions. And according to Patanjali, although he didn't use that terminology, this is also illegal. Don't live under the influence of previous impressions, or think under the influence of previous impressions. Go to the source, the actual seer who you are. Now, today I'm going to talk about one of the very practical aspects of Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga means the eightfold process of yoga and meditation. This is where meditation comes from, the Yoga Sutras, and it's called Ashtanga. And before there's any asanas, how many of you here have practiced asanas or practicing asanas now? Give me one of these thumbs up. JM's doing asanas. I did not know that. Okay. MM Dandapap. Jose, yes. Mukta. Magiere. Veda. I'm checking everybody here to see who's done asanas. Okay. Quite a few of you. So before Patanjali talks about asana, and he only devotes a few words to it. He just says asanas are meant so you can sit still. That's all he says. And it's not so easy to sit still if the body's uncomfortable. But before he even comes to that, he talks about the ways to live in the world, the ways that we relate to other people. And let's just do a quick review of what we looked at last week, and then I'm going to roll right into what's called the yamas. Everyone say yama. Yama.
Yama.
Yama means there are 5 yamas. They're the ways, the 5 ways we deal with others in the world. And here's a brief setup for this. There are 3 energetic transformations of nature called gunas. They're gunas means ropes. And the topmost modality is sattva, light, peacefulness, being balanced. Rajas, the middle mode, is smoky, opaque, active and chaotic, confusing. Tamas means dark energy, anger, gloominess, and so forth. A rope is made up of 3 strands mixed together. So similarly, the world has these 3 strands running through it. And these modalities influence everything. Then we talked last week about Patanjali's psychology of the mind, the 5 states of mind that are influenced by these modalities. So dull, wandering, distracted, one-pointed, and restrained. Only the last 2, one-pointed and restrained, reveal anything about reality. And therefore, dull, wandering, and distracted, which are the affects of the lower modes of nature or mixtures of them, leave us in a state where we're wanting, always wanting more, or just miserable altogether or depressed. So the way to actually find happiness is through finding inner happiness, because that's where happiness comes from. And that has to do with refining the mind and coming to these higher states of one-pointedness and restrainedness. New word for you. Within our mind, I remember I said the mind is called the chitta, which is the subtle substance upon which are reflected and imprinted the experiences that we've had, not just in this life, but in many, many previous lives. And now go back to my pond. I'm standing at the pond in North Carolina on the Poet's Walk, and I'm looking at the tree perfectly reflected in the water. I can't tell the difference between that willow tree and the reflection of the willow tree on the water. And now a wind comes up and it blows on the water, and now that tree appears to be moving. And the view of the tree is no longer clear. It's fragmented because of the movements on the water. So vrittis means waves. And these waves come from the stimuli that come into our chitta, into our mental space. And they affect us according to the way our mind is conditioned, whether it's in the lower mode of tamas, middle mode of rajas, or the top mode of sattva. And a samskar means, and you can think of the word scar, when you get a scar, it's there on your body from a previous event that happened. You cut yourself, something happened where the skin was punctured and the scar is there. So similarly, the mind has these imprints from previous experiences, and we recall them. The samskars influence us from what we call the subtle mind or the subconscious mind. So these are waves and impressions in the mind that affect us. And karma means that we're being impelled or forced to move in a certain way because of the echoes of these previous impressions. I'm not making a free choice, although it seems like I am. Have you ever been in a river and you're floating down the river and you thought, oh, I'm going pretty fast, or you think, oh, this is a nice gentle river, but did you ever try to turn around and swim the other direction in the river, even if it's going what appears to be slowly? It's a formidable force, the water moving, and it can just sweep us away. So although I'm following the impressions, the echoes of my mind, which are telling me, you like this, don't like that, do this, don't do that. These are because of my previous impressions coming from my subconscious mind. I'm simply following them. I like this person, I don't like that person. Because of my previous life, I was married to a certain type of person. When I see that type of person, according to whether my experience was good or bad previously, I become attracted or repulsed. And you see this picture, the pusher back there is what's karma, or the force, the flow of these previous impressions is pushing me. You choose to go to the right. However, when I come to the higher states of mind that I mentioned before, through refining the mind to the higher levels of sattva, it becomes more possible for me to make distinct choices because I have discrimination. I'm no longer pushed along by karma, but I'm making my own choices. And these are the 5 kleshas, or sufferings within the mind. The chief cause is avidya, or ignorance. It means that I take that which is temporary to be permanent and identify with it. So I think I'm my body, and this is ignorance, because the body is not me. I'm simply a resident within the body. Asmita means ego. My sense of self, which is a bundle of these previous impressions, but I say, oh, this is me, this is my identity. Then raga and dvesha means attachment and aversion, and I explained it from the last slide. I'm attached or averse to certain things because of previous impressions. These are all sufferings within the mind. I'm being forced in different ways and acting in erroneous ways. And abhiniveshita means clinging to life. What I perceive to be life is life within this body. I'm always changing the body, but I try to keep it in a stable position. It's not possible. So the abhiniveshita means I'm under constant stress from going against the current and trying to fight against the flow of karma and nature. So then we talked last week about the various ways to weaken these kleshas, or sufferings within the mind. And I'm going to come back to this later and show you today's subject, now that we did a quick review. But before we do that, we'll come back to the group mode, and I just see if you want to offer a reflection about anything that we've done so far, or a question to clarify any of the information I'm giving you from the Yoga Sutras. Let's see what you got.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Yes. So you said that if you try to swim, you gave the example of a river and how when you assume that it is going slow and you can go with the flow and you are kind of enjoying the ride. But when you try to go upstream and the force of the water is quite formidable, and you try to explain that in terms of our past thoughts and ideas, can you elaborate that on a little more, how we can get rid, I mean, how can we quieten that that flow going in the opposite direction, maybe?
Sure. Well, one way
Thank
to
you.
look at it, you're welcome. Thank you for such a nice question. First point is that until we actually do introspection and look at the mind and do self-discipline by doing the inner work of controlling the mind, we won't even notice that we're being carried along by the mind. So similarly, that's analogous to floating down the river and think, ah, da, 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 and it was, you're heading for a waterfall. And if I turn around and try to go against it, that's when I'll first notice it. Another way to analyze this in the context of what we're talking about is, how far above the water do you have to be not carried along? In Bengali, a language that I like very much, there's a poem that talks about, that has a phrase, onomatopoeic phrase, which is habu dubu. Everyone say habu dubu. Habu dubu. Say it 3 times. Habu dubu, habu dubu, habu dubu. Habu dubu is onomatopoeic. It means it's the sound of when you're drowning. Like bubbles are coming up. You're in the water and you're trying to get out and the waters are coming up. Habu dubu, bubble, bubble, bubble. So how far do you have to be above the water of the current to not drown? The answer is about an inch. That's all you have to be, just an inch above. So in the process of yoga, in the last 2 stages that I mentioned, in one-pointedness and also in restraint, one-pointedness, there's a level of meditation at which one can still the mind for 12 seconds. This is a great achievement that can take, you're 12 seconds away from a different stage of consciousness, but it might take you 17 years to reach that in the practice of meditation. And then another higher stage beyond that is 12 times 12, where the mind can actually be 1 inch above the flow, the current of these thoughts that are pulling us along. So in a couple ways, it's a useful analogy, being pulled along by the water. And that the Yoga Sutras assure us, if we observe these practices in our life, which I'll describe at the end, a little bit more detail, unless I run out the clock, then we can actually rise above that flow, and we can notice that we're free. We're freed from that force of the water, or in this case, the mind flow of these very strong desires and impressions. Great question. Thanks for bringing that up. That was very helpful. Let's see what other kinds of
Thank you.
ideas, thoughts you have. Thank you. Anyone?
We have a couple of questions on Zoom chat.
Well, yeah, that's great. You can write them in the Zoom chat too. Why don't you read them, Jai Madhav?
Yeah. So first one is Yabagina, I think it's a username, is asking, how do you know if karma is pushing you versus what is really right for you?
Well, there's a more detailed explanation I can go into in subsequent classes if you like. And there are descriptions, what you'll find to be, I guarantee you, very accurate descriptions of the symptoms of the various modalities and the effects they have upon us in our lives. Very accurate and detailed. And for instance, in the mode of tamas, or the lowest mode of darkness, there's this anger energy. something happens and then I become angry. By the way, I mean, it's one of the most dangerous of all our emotions. People can ruin they can ruin a relationship, they can ruin their life, they can accidentally kill someone, known as manslaughter, in the heat of the moment, uh, because of anger. And so yogis are very, very careful about not dipping into these energies. And then in the mode of rajas, there's a definition in there. I'll just give the most basic of definitions of rajas, and that is too much is not enough. Whatever I get, there's still more to be had. And the mode of sattva is the purer mode of light, and there's a sense of contentment that I have enough. I am something that's you can see yourself. It's self-effulgent, that modality. So one can experience these, one can study the modalities as much as a doctor who studies the symptoms of a particular disease like malaria. I had it once, and I flew in from Calcutta with malaria, and they quarantined me in New York City in the hospital many years ago. It was the 1970s. And they had to go through a few doctors before one that specialized in tropical diseases could ascertain that I had malaria, because he had studied it and he had seen it before. So, oh, you have malaria. So similarly, when we study the symptoms of these things, we can also take a look at ourselves. It also helps to have somebody who can help you, who's also experienced in this information and the practice, who can also help, guide, mentor, and things like that, just like you would with a doctor. You can look it up online on doctor.com or whatever they have, but you can also go to the hospital and ask a physician. And then there are transcendent symptoms. For instance, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a description of the preliminary experience of being above that water that I talked about, of being above that flow of the river that's pulling us down. And the description is given in a verse that says, Brahma bhuta prasannatma nashochati nakankshati samak sarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labate param. So it's describing what it feels like to be above the modalities altogether, above even sattva, in your original transcendental state. And here are three symptoms you can probably relate to. One is joyfulness. It means joyful for no reason. It's not that you had to win anything. It's not that you had got good news or anything. It's just you're spontaneously joyful. This is the first symptom of being above the modalities, which are full of anxieties. And then there's a sense of compassion, universal compassion. And then there's also a sense of samak sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim lapate param. Oh, of not hankering. You don't want anything. You don't need anything. You're fully satisfied in the moment. You're in the moment and not looking for anything in the future. Fully in the moment. So these are some of the very preliminary symptoms, but there are many, many more. So that's how one might ascertain. Let's do one more, JM, and then I'll go through the yamas.
I
Sure.
have a comment, if
Yes.
that's okay.
Yes,
No, please.
please go ahead.
So when you were leading the meditation, and you were talking about thought energy, I found my thought energy changing from like a negative energy to a positive energy, because before I joined the call, I had a kind of busy, stressful morning. So my thoughts were kind of spiraling. I also found that my perspective on my thoughts was also changing, because you mentioned, they're like clouds in the sky, right? I'm not my thoughts. They don't define me, right? And then I also found that they started to slow down. That spiraling was, started to slow down, and I could almost look at my thoughts individually and say, okay, you don't really need to worry about that one. You can do that one later. You've done all this good stuff this morning. Don't worry about it,
This is excellent. and this is one of the benefits that you're articulating of introspection, is looking in and seeing actually what's taking place and developing vivek. Vivek means discrimination. What am I? And am I these thoughts? Am I my life situation? Or am I dealing with these life situations as an observer and an instrument? So this is what is called enlightened engagement with the world. It doesn't mean we become antisocial, asocial. It means that we are able to deal with the world in a more enlightened way, because we're observing who we are and who others are also. And we have, as I said before, there are other symptoms like compassion. And when we rise to the higher modalities, anger doesn't become an issue, or even if it does, because sometimes if any of you have been swimming in the beach where there's waves, and little wave, little wave, little wave, little wave, then big wave comes, every hour or so. In Hawaii, so many times you'd be in the water and then there's small waves, small sets, and then all of a sudden gigantic wave and everyone's screaming and running away. So similarly in our consciousness, there are these vrittis or waves, and some of them influenced by the lower modalities like tamas. Anger can come up. But if you're practiced in introspection and meditation, then when it does come up, just like surfers know, when a huge wave comes and you go, I'm not riding it and I can't stand up to it, you have to go underneath it. You dive down, you duck down under the wave. So one who's accomplished in this meditation, or even doing a little bit, will have the wherewithal to actually deal with these vrittis or waves that are coming into the mental system as you just described just now. Thank you very much, as usual, Evan. All right, now I better get to this, the subject matter for today. And these are the yamas. So there are 5 yamas and 5 niyamas that precede any other practice in the Ashtanga yoga practice, including doing asanas. And these are like a uniform that you wear in your life to adopt a lifestyle of being an enlightened person who deals with the world in an enlightened way. This according to Patanjali, the author of the Yoga Sutras, who lived thousands of years ago. So here's the 5 ways of dealing with others called yamas. So the first is called ahimsa, which is also described as, translated from Sanskrit, it's a Sanskrit word, into non-violence. Non-violence. But actually, it means to not envy others. Freedom from envy. So there's this sense that if I feel envy towards others, like they should get out of my space. I'm the only one on the planet. Nobody else deserves to live but me. This is a kind of a symptom of envy. But when you practice ahimsa, you practice refining your mind so there's no envy of other living beings, and you live without harming others. And Patanjali says when you achieve ahimsa, which is vitally important for living an enlightened way in life and achieving clear states of mind, the benefit you get from that is you achieve the power to reconcile problems and arguments with people, and you're able to spread peace because it's emanating from you. Your mind, your chitta actually takes a higher modality, the sattva modality, which is full of light. So ahimsa is extremely vital. It also includes not killing others. That includes other living beings. So one should be really careful, according to Patanjali, about the way one moves around the world. Don't unnecessarily kill other living beings. There's a rule in the world, jivo jivasya jivanam. Practically speaking, we live by killing others. Even if you're a vegetarian, there's ways you do, but you should minimize it as much as possible and choose to be as non-violent as possible. Because if you don't, says Patanjali, there's karma, and karma means these waves will come back to your mind and push you in a certain direction. So ahimsa, non-envy and non-violence. The second one is called satya, truthfulness. So being truthful in all circumstances, except he and Plato and Aristotle, all of them describe the ethics of the truth. And that is, for instance, if you see a person fleeing from a murderous person, and the murderer asks you, which way did they go? You're not obligated to tell the truth at that point because it spares the life of another. However, in all normal circumstances, one should be straightforward and tell the truth. And amazingly, Patanjali said, when you're avowedly truthful, then your words take on a special power. Whatever you say manifests. The next one is called asteya, which means not stealing. And that means taking only what you need as your quota. You don't have to hoard. You don't have to take more than you need, because then you'll be taking other people's quotas. And we kind of notice that on the planet nowadays. If people take too much, or really spread out, and like they start taking away the habitat of others, and more than you need is taking more than you need is a kind of stealing. And also just outright stealing is a disturbance to the mind, because it's not yours. It wasn't provided to you. So the benefit of not stealing from others and not taking more than your quota is that whatever you need will come to you automatically by its own accord. I know monks who live very simple lives, but they always have more than enough. And it's not like they try for it and they don't really need much, but it just comes to them naturally, automatically. You don't have to be a monk to do this. It's not that you have to live without anything, but if you take what you need and you don't grab more than that, then it becomes a situation where many things manifest to you naturally, according to Patanjali. And you can try this. Then next is brahmacharya, or regulation of sexual habits. So this gives great strength in Ayurveda and in the yoga practice. Controlling sexual energy is very important. It's not for just unfettered recreation, but the yogis are very careful about controlling their sexual energy, because there are many implications, obviously, from just unregulated practice, sexual practices. And then aparigraha means non-possessiveness. So non-possessiveness means not coveting. Means if you see somebody, like you see they're driving a car and it's like, oh, I should have that car. Why should I have that car? There's a way that you can walk through a neighborhood and think, oh, I want that house. Not coveting means be satisfied with what you have. It's very similar to asteya, but you can notice it's a subtle energy. And the benefit is that your mind becomes so clear, your chitta is so clear, you can actually, Patanjali says, see your past lives, just as if you're looking into a clear pond and you see the stones at the bottom of it, you can see each one of your previous lives. It means your mind becomes very, very clear. And these are the 5 yamas, the disciplines through which we deal with the outside world. So I'd just like to hear if you have any reflections from hearing any of those, or any questions to illuminate them a little bit more.
We have a question on Zoom from Mariam Rahmani. Can some people be born in a higher enlightened state compared to others? Some people seem to reach the enlightenment more natural and easier than others.
What a great question. Yes, because every one of us is on a continuum. When you see a baby come into the world, that baby has a storehouse of samskars already from previous lives. It's recorded there already. And you'll notice that children, even twins, when they begin to grow up, they manifest their own natures according to their subconscious mind, which is a reservoir of these samskars, or previous impressions. So by the same principle, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says in the 6th chapter, 42nd verse, that people who are naturally attracted to the yogic principles, that it just dawns on them that this is a good idea, I should be doing this. They have that samskar from previous lives. They've already practiced yoga. And some people who have become very advanced in yoga in previous lives and haven't come to the 100% perfect stage, otherwise they wouldn't take another birth, then those people, they manifest their acumen for it very quickly in life. Even there's stories of young children, even I know some young children that are born into yogi families, and they're naturally attracted and very adept at the practices of yoga very soon. So yes, the answer is yes.
When you were talking about ahimsa and how these people think I'm the only person on the planet that matters, all I could think about was the anti-mask people.
Yeah, well, to me, mask is not a big deal because I spend so much time in Japan, and way before I even thought a pandemic could take over the planet, I really didn't think about it. In fact, traveling so much, I remember going through Asia when there was some flu a few years ago also, which was a very serious matter, but it didn't turn into a pandemic, obviously. But I remember walking through customs, and they had these infrared cameras, and I think, what are these guys doing here? Now I'll probably think more about it. But my point is, in Japan, nearly a third of the population wears masks all the time because they're very socially conscious and careful about the way they interact with others. It's a different kind of, their sense of space and their sense of, not infecting others is a little different. And, it is a kind of a way that we can see, we can relate to yama as if you don't care about others, or you don't care about taking precautions, for disturbing others. You shouldn't disturb others. As much as possible, you should avoid it. Sometimes it's unavoidable. But whenever you can, avoid it. This is this is very much in line with the sense of ahimsa. Don't cause harm or disturbance to other people. Not just people, all living entities. Don't disturb them. My spiritual teacher used to be very careful wherever he went around the world. He didn't like people chopping down trees unnecessarily. He'd become very upset. It's like, you have no right to chop down that tree. There's this sense, be very, very careful how you tread around the world. Yes, thanks for bringing that up. What other thoughts? Any reactions to the yamas? Do they sound at all reasonable or logical? How do you feel about them? I'd love to hear.
We have a...
Yes.
Go ahead. Was there anything?
No, please. After you.
I was just saying we have a couple of questions and reflection on Zoom chat. One is from Nirali.
I can maybe explain if that.
Please, Nirali, go ahead.
So things, I like to say I complain and not really desire, but then it comes to me and I feel like, how is it right to do that kind of desire? It's like I in my mind, I'm not asking for position, but I'm kind of complaining about something, and then it comes to me as a resolution. So it's I don't know. I understand that being desireless is good, but sometimes it's a fine line. I feel like go into. It's like I'm complaining. That means I'm desiring something better, right?
Yeah, that's true. The complaining energy is, of course, let me just distinguish, that both the Bhagavad Gita and in the Yoga Sutras, but especially you'll find more refined information about this particular topic you're mentioning about desire in Bhagavad Gita. And that is that it's the nature of the living experience. And we are conscious living entities. We're non-neural, we're non-chemical, We're non-temporal organizing particles, conscious particles that are part of a bigger whole that comes from an original conscious source. And as such, we're always active, and it's not that we don't have volition, and it's not that we don't have ambition or desire. It's just a matter of whether how those desires are directed. For instance, it takes desire to want to practice this kind of discipline to improve oneself.
Yeah.
That's not a material desire to want to be better, to
Yeah.
want to improve oneself. So there is no sense in yoga. Nowhere in the Yoga Sutras or the Bhagavad Gita is there a suggestion that you should snuff yourself out and not exist. And not existing means not having any desire at all. It's not possible, according to these wisdom literatures. It's a very unnatural thought to not exist, not desire. But to refine and purify your thoughts and the way you interact with the world, this is the state of yoga. Samatvam yoga uchite, Krishna says in the Gita. Yoga is the art of being sama, or balanced, living in balance in the world and not being overcome by these impulses and vrittis from the lower modes of nature. Does that help, Nirali?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, we'll take one more and then we can do a little japa, an explanation of how to go above the modes of nature, how to go above the vrittis, the currents within the mind. Let's see if we can go for one more reflection or question. What do you think, Jayam? Anything?
Yes, we do have one from Arun on Zoom. Follow-up question to the previous questions about some people born with higher enlightened state. The question was, so if a few people are born in higher enlightened state, how is that fair to others? Why is someone being punished in a new life with lower state, whereas giving for others with higher state?
It's not a punishment per se. It's just like if you're running a race and you run slower than other people, then you're self-pacing. And so Bhagavad Gita really is a book of information that tells us how to get rid of the resistance for our progress. And as much as we take that, we can make our own, we can reduce our own restrictions. And we can remove them. Just like now, we're getting knowledge. We're getting this information from these Yoga Sutras of how to be discriminatory, how to live in ways that are not causing more karma in our mind and reactions. And we can apply them. And as much as we apply them, then we can get ahead. And that includes, there's a carryover from your last life. You keep whatever advancement you make. It's actually more fair because everyone ultimately gets exactly what they deserve. There's no mistake that, you get more, somebody gets less, and they deserved more. But isn't it more empowering to know that I get exactly what I deserve? Because if it was any other way, then we wouldn't be in control of our future. And any self-respecting self-help guru will tell you the same thing, which is that we are the architects of our own future. This is just more detailed information telling us how to how to actually construct our future. It's very subtly technological information that we can use to improve our lives. So it's up to us to do that. And if you do it well in this life, you'll start off in a better place in your next life. And if somebody, doesn't want to do it, then there are lessons still to learn. And that's all it is. When somebody starts at a different pace, they still have refinement to do. Okay, that was a good question also, very helpful. It brought us to that conclusion. And let's just do a little bit of meditation at the end. And one of the ways that we practice what is called karma yoga or bhakti yoga is to do mantra. Mantra is a sound vibration that comes from a different stratum, a higher stratum above the three modalities. And just as you get information in this world from sound, like if you use ultrasound or use sonar, you're able to tell from sonar what's under the ocean. Ultrasound, you can tell what's in your body. And mantra is also a sound, and it resonates with our atma, or our self, that is beyond the coverings of the body, gross and subtle. And so when we utter the mantra, all we have to do is say it and hear it and keep the mind absorbed in it. So put the mantra in your mind and then put your mind in the mantra and make them one. And that's all you have to do for mantra meditation. And the first mantra is the Nitai Gauranga mantra, which opens the heart. So we'll say this together, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a tabla in the background. You can follow me. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. And now we go to the Mahamantra, which is the mantra of our original conscious source and love personified. So these Hare Krishna means this propensity that we have, every living entity has to love. It emanates from the spiritual plane of existence, and it's manifest in this world through this avatar, this mantra, which is the same as an avatar. Avatar means that entity which comes from a higher realm to a lower realm. And so when we say this, we open up that channel to the dimension beyond the modalities of this world. So let's try this one together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mantra meditation is recommended by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, also in the Bhagavad Gita. And japa is a kind of meditation where you take a little time to sit, or you can pace very slowly, but definitely try sitting first, and repeat the mantra so you can hear it. And just repeat it over and over again and listen to the sound, and you'll learn so much about yourself. This is called swadhyaya. Swa means yourself, and swadhyaya means to study yourself. So this is a very, very powerful kind of meditation. And the mantra itself brings a kind of energy that you will notice after you've practiced just a little bit that lifts you up above that current naturally without having to do a lot of extra steps. Just use the mantra. And now we've come really to the end. So if there's any last comments or questions, I'll take them. Hey, Lavanya, thank you very much. Thanks for being there. Thank you very much, everybody, for taking your valuable time and sticking in here. And I'll look forward to seeing you next Friday, as long as we're all still here. And we'll keep, in the meantime, remember, where attention goes, energy flows. And you can point your attention anywhere you like. Try pointing it inwardly at least once a day for a little while like we did today. And also keep the transcendental vibration going. As the sound vibration in our life is what's the main determinant of our consciousness. So if you practice a little bit of mantra, you'll see that it will have an inordinate effect upon you positively. Okay, Arun, I'll see you next time. Mukta, thank you very much. Deepak, thank you. I don't know all the names, but I thank you to everybody. It's been a real pleasure. And JM, thanks for keeping things going. And who ran the show today, did you say?
Anushri.
Anushri, thank you very much. Good job. She's really good. All right. See you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.